大家好，欢迎收听可持续对话，我是主播邢哲明。可持续对话，让对话可持续。大家好，欢迎收听可持续对话。这一期同样是一场英文访谈，也是我们推出的第4次英文访谈对话。这一次的录制地点是在新加坡，而我的对话伙伴是一位我认识多年的老朋友，资深传播与公共关系专家 Wendy Loh。我到新加坡出差的时候，给 Wendy 发了一条信息，说既然大家都在 ESG 和传播这个领域工作，不如坐下来聊一聊，做一期节目。他很爽快地答应了，于是就有了这场对话。这期节目其实更像一次久违的专业 catch up。我们从公关行业这些年的变化聊起，谈到了战略传播、国际传播、AI 对于传播行业的影响，也聊到了 ESG 为什么正在成为企业战略沟通中的重要组成部分。作为两个在传播行业工作多年的从业者，坐在一起，一边回顾这个行业的变化，一边也在思考，在一个越来越复杂的时代，沟通、叙事和信任究竟意味着什么？接下来就让我们一起走进这场在新加坡录制的英文对话。如果你喜欢这样的讨论，也欢迎点赞、评论和分享，也欢迎你加入到我们的播客听友群，跟更多的伙伴一起讨论可持续发展。可持续对话，让对话可持续。请听这一次的英文访谈。
Hi everybody, this is Zheming and we are now in Singapore and I have this privilege to meet with my friend Wendy Loh. Wendy, say hi to our listeners and followers.
Hi everyone, hello from Singapore.
And this is a very interesting occasion because we met each other like 3-4 months ago, and this is my second trip to Singapore in a very short period of time. And I said, okay, I need to talk with Wendy because we share a professional background, both in PR, and now Wendy is moving toward ESG, as many of our colleagues and all the other professionals are literally looking deeply for ESG. And I always wanted to ask Wendy, what's her opinion about the integration of a PR career and now moving toward ESG? There are so many things to discuss. So that is why I just texted Wendy and say, let's do a show. And she gladly said, okay, let's get our conversations going. So Wendy, say hi to our followers and then give us a brief introduction. I know it's almost impossible because you had a wonderful professional career, but introduce yourself a little bit.
Hello, Zheming, and I hope you are coming back to Singapore more often.
Of course.
I'm really glad that after our first meeting after so long, so maybe a bit of brief background, Zheming and I, we actually never really worked together in the same agency. We just know each other because we are alumni of an agency, and it's through this wonderful network of people knowing people. He said, okay, I'm in town, let's meet up. And I thought, why not? Let's meet up. And I think importantly, you find a lot of people who stay on in the agency world or in a PR role are people who really love what we do. And I'm glad we both really share that passion. I've been in this industry for about 25, coming to 26 years, 10 years of which were spent in Beijing, right? And
that was pre-Olympic, right?
Pre-Olympics, pre-COVID, pre-everything. But I think that was a wonderful time to be there. It was 2003, right after SARS. Beijing was wonderful and clean, and I was there for 10 years until 2013. So I basically saw the city growing and progressing.
And becoming more globalized.
Lovely, yes, preparing for Olympics. Then we had Shanghai Shibo, Shanghai Expo in 2010. So this was actually the most wonderful time because a lot of companies in China were thinking of going out, 走出去. A lot of international companies operating in China are looking at how do we do business in China.
Localizing is a permanent topic for any company who works globally. And I think that you moved back to Singapore after 2013-ish.
Yes.
And you take on many more roles across agencies, in-house roles.
Correct. So my background is a bit of agency role, in-house role, and now a bit of teaching because as you become a senior leader, you think about how do I give back whether it's to the industry or otherwise. So I enjoy a lot of mentoring and coaching in the workplace, and I thought, hey, why not take it at the educational level? So I'm also teaching part-time in the universities in terms of teaching communication skills to the next generation of students. And I think one thing is, I think let's go back, rewind so long ago in terms of how I even got into the industry, right? This was almost, imagine, 30 years ago in Singapore, when Singapore first set up the communication school. I was the 4th batch of students, right? And to me, it's not like I grew up thinking, oh, I want to do PR. Everybody's watching Sex and the City, and that's what everybody thinks PR is, right? And to me, it was more of, sad to say, a process of elimination, right? So I studied accounting, economics, literature in school, but I didn't do really well in cons. And then after I thought, I don't really enjoy science that much. So what am I left with, right? Law, arts and social science. Then I found out about mass comm. And I thought, hey, let's go for this, because I always love to have a good discussion. I always like to keep things great. There's no right or wrong. I always like to keep things alive. And this was a subject that really seemed to call to me. And I remember when I applied for this job, for this university placement, my mom was asking me, what exactly are you studying?
Are you going to be a reporter?
Are you going to be a reporter? Are you going to talk about news? Are you going to report about people? And I thought, that's part of that. And then she asked me, okay, during Chinese New Year, can you write down in Chinese what exactly you're studying, so I can tell my relatives, 大众传播系, what exactly it is. And to this day, right, I remember when I was in China, one of our junior members actually told me when she was going home from work late one night, and the taxi driver looked at her and said, oh, so late, where are you going? What are you working as? And this ex-colleague said, 公关小姐.
公关小姐.
PR lady, which, as we know in the Chinese world,
a big stereotype.
You think you're working in KTV or something, right? And then I realized,
entertaining business.
Yes, and I realized that 公关 has a 公关 problem, right? Communications.
We need to justify ourselves.
Yes, so it's very interesting. But we fast forward to today, so much has progressed between whether Singapore and in China, where the communications market is so much more mature these days.
And starting as a PR professional, so you are trained professionally as a PR, not PR professional, general communication studies, but working as a reporter is nothing like working as a PR specialist. So I think it's very interesting, because I think with your cohort, there's definitely so many people still stuck or thrive in the general communication industry. Some of them may be an editor-in-chief or a senior reporter or the management role at a news agency, and many of them are literally sitting on the key roles like the director of strategic communication, head of PR, etc., etc. How do you find, many people may ask, there is a broad spectrum of the job. You are working in the communication business, there are so many options. Where to get started, especially for the young professionals?
I think it's very hard to say where do you get started. Of course, in my time, you would think, okay, having that trained background and learning gives you an advantage. But I feel in this day and age, and my daughter, she's 18 this year, she wants to do comms. And I did tell her that educational background would maybe give you an advantage half a year these days. Because with AI and everything else, it's really more about the attitude, the aptitude, and whether you're really willing to work hard, to go out and hustle, to go out and network, right? And you always have to be in this mentality and mode, like yourself, Ziming, right? When you have a time to relax, it's not really relaxing. Your mind is thinking,
connecting the dots all the time.
Correct. What else can I do next? And the important thing about this connecting the dots, it makes you happy. It makes you happy that somebody is linked with somebody, and things are happening, great things are happening, because I know who I managed to bring who and who together. I think that's the beauty of what we do, whether as a communicator or as a connector or in relations, right?
And Goody has charged, sometimes I see that as a disease, quote unquote.
Yeah, they're always on, right?
Because you're always on, you're always thinking about a new initiative, connecting people together, tell a better story, things like that.
It is. I totally identify with this always on mentality, because for some people, they think it's tiring, they think it's tiresome, right? There's always this thing about, especially after COVID, when can I switch off, right? Because we're always on work from home, everything, we're connected to your devices. And I feel what has made me stick with this industry, and not just stick with it because I have no other choice, but because of the fact that I really love what I do.
Yeah.
And I'm really glad that this is something that even though I 误打误撞 came into this industry, I managed to thrive in it. I managed to see the satisfaction of now giving back. And I think that's what keeps me going. The love for it, the fact that there's never a down moment. Every day you have something new.
It's an ever-changing thing,
yes,
right?
it is very fun. And the fact that, now there are ways at our level to be able to leverage that to give back for good. In a way, like, for example, I volunteer with certain organizations. And I think my comm skill is able to turn all these things into good for
Into
society
reality,
as well.
yeah.
Yes.
I think delivering is something all the PR person are fixating on. They are just here to resolve or to solve a problem.
Yeah.
And we always identify there must be the best approach to get this done.
Yeah.
So that is why I find super excited of working with people with the same mentality. And sometimes it's very difficult for young professionals to hit the threshold.
Yeah.
Because, I think when you reach a certain level, it is a very difficult learning curve.
It is.
It started easy.
Yeah.
But when you ascend to the top, it's difficult.
Yeah.
For instance, I always say that AI is a good tool.
Yeah.
But now we don't need writers, but we need good editors. But the young professionals, they know how to use AI.
Yeah.
They can generate press release more efficiently than before. They don't need to translate. They don't need to write from scratch.
Yeah.
But they're not good editors. They don't know what's right and what's wrong.
Correct.
And how to find a sweet spot of communication.
It is.
And that is challenging for young people.
It
Do
is.
you still sense that there is a
For
big
sure.
threshold for young professionals to ascend to the top?
Yeah, for sure. I feel that the advent of AI has allowed us to be able to weed out the people who are not so good in their jobs. It means that they have to fear that their jobs are being replaced, and they have to ask, what is my value add, right? Even without AI, when we are put in front of a client, what's our value add to the client? The client knows the industry better. The client knows the media better. The client talks directly with the boss. What's your value add as an agency partner? What do I bring into the table? It's the additional layer of thinking. I always feel that with AI, rubbish in, rubbish out. You give a rubbish prompt, you get rubbish work.
Yes, of course.
But if you put on that layered thinking, right? First off, if you want to do that draft, run it through AI. You have to ask AI to know what to look out for.
Yes.
It's a tool that will work for you, right? And hopefully that will help make it's not saying that we're going to have less work now because of AI. We're going to just work intelligently so that we can focus our brain work on something else that matters.
I totally agree with you. It's basically we save a lot of time by doing things, very, very tiring things, repetitive
tasks.
things.
Yeah.
And we do it more efficiently.
Yeah.
Then in that case, we have more time to think deeply.
Yes.
We can engage with internal and external stakeholders to figure out the best approach and how to have the leverage of communication, right?
Yes, and
It's
we will
sexier.
always have the perennial question and pushback from the client. I can do a press release myself because I now have AI to do it. Yes, you can.
One person company.
Yes, you can. But is it nuanced enough? Does it take into account certain sensitivities, perhaps, of the context, of the situation, of this country, of this market? That's where you need to bring that value add to the client.
The comprehensive understanding of everything.
Yes, and you can then tell the client, sure, we'll cut our hours on the actual drafting. Let's spend more hours on the actual thinking.
Yes, of course.
Yes.
So I think, as a senior PR professional, I think the best part of this job is actually you are confident enough to persuade your client. And also you literally can sign off press release. As a junior guy, as a junior person, you definitely feel intimidated. Is that safe to say like this? But when you push your boundaries toward a more perfected version, this is how you get to learning.
It's interesting you brought that up because there are two things. One is like in the university, we are teaching them executive presence, right? And a lot of times, and I look at the research and look at what people have done, people will say, I think you have 10 years of experience, but I think he's not ready to be a manager, right? Yeah. Because why? I just don't get it. Like, he's there, but he's not there. He looks like a boss, but he doesn't behave like a boss.
Yeah.
And that thing that's lacking makes people lose out in the workplace.
Of course.
So I'm glad that increasingly people are realize you need to put in effort to make yourself heard, to make yourself stand out in the workplace. And I have nothing against introverts. In fact, I love having introverts and extroverts in a mix of meeting.
Yes.
Can you imagine 10 Wendy's in a room? That's really noisy, right?
Yeah.
But you do need people who also, in fact, I've been really impressed by people who just stop, think, and it comes out. Wow, words of wisdom. That's wonderful. And I feel we then need to make the place a bit more inclusive in terms of making sure introverts have a chance to speak up.
Yes.
Email me after that.
Yeah.
Talk to me one-on-one.
Yes.
Because we then miss losing out on hearing from these people. And the second thing is I feel the gravitas that comes with it. Right? People will say, yes, she's at that level. She's the head of comms. But a lot of times it's just execution work, right? We have to fight for our place and earn our place at the table to be able to push back against very intimidating board of directors and to say, this is what I know best from my years of comms.
This is the best approach.
Yes, this is the best approach. Because I've had junior members join me in media trainings before, right? And of course, they are young, right?
They have their self-censorship.
Yes, they're young and they're so scared to pretend to be a journalist, to ask the difficult questions against the white-haired old man right in front of her. But at the end of the day, I said, they do what they do 24/7. You do comms 24/7. You are the expert at the table. Bring that to the table, right? And I always tell people, we are only as strong as our so-called most junior member of the team. If you look good, you're going to make all of us look good. So I'm behind you in that.
And I think one point that I always use now is basically for young professionals, not only in the PR industry, but for the general communication industry, especially for those working as reporters and journalists, I find them, they are creating contents for approval. They're not creating contents for impact. Right?
It's a very true observation.
But if you are senior enough, you need to make the call, you need to get things done, you always need to create something that is impactful, right? But you have no one to approve, sign off for your contents and your decisions. So I think, if you want to be a sophisticated PR professional or communication expert, I think you need to have the gut to create for impact, not for approval.
And it does take that courage to speak up, to not question yourself, because tell yourself you actually know better than the client in that sense. And if we take that big step back, we are talking then about being more strategic, right? If the client say, can you create 10 short form LinkedIn posts? I'll ask for what? For what?
For what purpose?
What do you want to reach out to? Are you reaching out for the purpose of maybe branding, for the purpose of talent recruitment and retention?
Engagement with stakeholders?
What's your idea behind this? In that case, is LinkedIn the best approach? Is a press release the best approach? All this we're talking about tactics. But always have that conversation with the client, not to be difficult, but to make the client ask internally as well, the why. Because sometimes the client gets a lot of pressure, whether he or she is reporting to sometimes not to the CEO, but maybe HR, then or maybe sales. And it's all very numbers driven.
Office politics.
Correct. Then you need to put yourself in the shoes of the client and ask, what kind of pressures or what kind of questions is this person getting internally? And then you can know, let's see how we dissect the problem so that internally she's accountable, she makes her stakeholders happy as well, right?
So basically, I think working in the communication field is something, as we discussed this before, is the answer giver. We always give an answer. We always know what's best. And we are sometimes very committed and determined to do this. You've worked with a lot of C-suite people, and we always need to face the pressure before a board. Because sometimes, it's very, especially in terms of strategic communication, it's a compromise. And sometimes I always persuade the C-suite people saying, you don't necessarily need to say this because it has more risk than what you want to get from this communication campaign. But being determined to say so in front of a board or in front of the CEOs and all the VPs, takes some courage,
Yeah.
right? So how did you train yourself to be the
Yeah.
one who say no in front of the important people?
So can you imagine that when I first went to China, I was below 30, I was 26 years old. They'll look at me, quite young, doesn't speak Mandarin as well as me, doesn't know the market as well as me. What right do you have to tell me what to do in my market, right? And increasingly, of course, my skin became much more thicker. And I would share with them because I would always tell them, I do not know your industry as well as you. I do not know your company as well as you. But what I bring to the table as an agency partner is the knowledge that you have that I bring from other client work that I've done in the past, work that I've done in other markets, from the fact that I'm doing this on a daily basis more than you are doing, right? So you have to adopt that mindset. People do not question a doctor or a lawyer, do you know what you're doing? Because we are not trained in law, we are not trained to be a doctor. I don't ask my doctor, of course, unless you look at Google and try and self-diagnose, we don't ask that. We don't question a young doctor in that way. So why should a young comms practitioner feel the pressure to have to justify, right? Because just because people think ChatGPT, I can write. But there's a layer of beyond content development, beyond writing, there's so many other things that a comms person should be doing.
So this is very inspiring, and sometimes it's really, how to say that, easing the nerves of the young professionals. But we are talking about communication skills as part of their capabilities for anyone who exists on this planet. Now, basically, you have your LinkedIn, you have your WeChat moment. It seems that previously there is no individual branding, or you don't have something, you can always work behind the radar or something. And now everybody needs to do BD for their own, etc., etc. So this is a brand new environment for anybody, right?
It is.
So communication skills is no longer necessarily, limited to those who, and especially when we work with the best CEOs and chairmen, they are naturally or professionally trained to be a good communicator, both internally, externally. What can we learn from these top business people?
It's interesting you bring that up. So nowadays we look at, for example, employees, right? Everyone is an ambassador of the company already, right? You have your own LinkedIn profile, you go up for meetings, and the way that you present yourself is a recruitment ad in itself.
15 years ago, 10 years ago, only the salespeople, only the PR people, only the government relations people can do that.
And that layers on another challenge for comms people, right? The comms people who are scared will say, oh no, I must give them a handbook. They have to follow exactly this. Of course, there are some legal issues with people talking about things. But once you put people in that box, it's very hard for the personality to come through, and the authenticity then is lost. So if we talk about, we elevate it to at the C level, at the C-suite, not everybody is a good spokesperson, right? Sometimes we will look at some executives and the PR people will be really scared putting him or her in front of putting him or her in front of a live interview, because we got personalities. It's fine if the person is nervous. We got the other extreme of people who are overconfident and like, you know what, I can talk about anything. I do this on a daily basis. I can do this on a daily basis. Nothing's going to go wrong. If it goes wrong, I'm just going to ask them to take it down. That's the other kind that we want to make sure we try and, I wouldn't say control, but to try and manage the expectations. We either print interview, pre-record it, find a way to get around it, So I think the role of a communicator becomes even more challenging because everybody thinks they can talk, right?
Everybody is entitled to talk.
Everybody thinks they can talk, but to be able to talk in 30-second sound bites, punchy sound bites, not everyone can do that. So I've trained like many executives at a C-level, right? And some of them will come into a room and be very pompous, laid back, and think, why do I need to spend 2 hours with you again? Why do I need this? I've appeared on CNBC before. I've appeared on BBC before.
I'm a pro.
I'm a pro. I don't need to be taught anything. But at the end of the session, I wouldn't say they're humbled. At the end of the session, I feel heartened that they find it useful because one, they get reminded. Two, they realize, yes, there's always an opportunity to do better. Right? And I think the good way that we engage executives like that is not to put them down, is to let them realize your experience has to work for you, not against you.
Yes.
Right? And the fact that everyone else has their own agenda. Sorry, but journalists are not your friends at the end of the day. They have their stakeholders to account to, their readers to account to, their editors to account to. If they can make a story and if it works against you, you have to try and see how do you want to turn that around.
I agree with you. Sometimes I think the PR or communication folks need to be the ugly bitch, right? We always need to say something that looks, sounds offensive, but is literally thinking on behalf of the board. We are trying to think of different stakeholders. What are the reactions from different stakeholders? Is that safe or is that stable or is that okay to say something like this? What about the narratives? Are you over-promising, right? Something like that. Or are you creating conflicts? Something like that.
That day I was just having a discussion with somebody about crisis management. Like at what point does a company say sorry or not? And I brought up the issue about lawyers. Lawyers always tell you, please do not go apologize. We're going to get into trouble. We're going to make us liable for everything, right? So it's a very, very fine balance. Is ChatGPT going to be able to make that decision?
They're not making a decision. But sometimes I find that working with AI, they can always give you a nuanced answer. They give a couple of options, but you need to make the call.
Make that decision,
right?
correct.
You need to make the call. That is something, you know, without experiences, without working in the front line, you never know what's best. That's sometimes, you know, I work with some junior professionals when they give me the press release draft, I said, okay, this is pure AI. I can sense that, I can feel that. And usually sometimes, you know, a lot of startup companies or early stage companies, they don't have the capacity or they don't have the money to hire senior people. And usually a lot of, I call it, a lot of risks or literally growing with a company's not professional communication, you know, practices. And you sometimes, you know, and whenever you are fundraising, you do some due diligence by your potential investor. Things like there are track records that you cannot deny.
There have been issues in Singapore in court where lawyers have been called out because they quote fake cases that were generated by AI. So my point is always look at AI as your intern. Very, very new, raw, green intern. If a raw green intern gives you a draft, you would scrutinize it, right? Why wouldn't you scrutinize something from AI? So always lend that layer of thinking to whatever you get.
But I have to be very thankful to AI because AI is now becoming a kind of I wanted to call it, it's becoming a container for my thoughts, right? Because sometimes
you bounce off, it's an intellectual sparring
you challenge
for you.
each other, etc., etc. And sometimes, you know, they surprise you in a way that, you know, sometimes you overlooked. They say, okay, this is not the case. Sometimes you are simply not thinking enough, and they give you some backup. And that is best. And we want to talk about today, talking about stakeholder engagement, because that is the essence of both communication and also ESG. Because the reason why I feel so excited when I embrace ESG as a PR professional is basically I say, oh, this is basically what I do on a daily basis, right? As a PR folk, you need to engage with stakeholders of different positioning. They have different requirements. Always want to have a win-win situation, not a zero-sum game, right? And also working as an ESG is like, you know, you are a good student, you want to do better, but there are matrix for you to guide your way toward a better version of yourself. And I think, okay, this is something very exciting. So you also enter the ESG. It's not like, you know, we work as a PR, we always need to engage with different stakeholders. We need to sponsor a CSR program, etc., etc. It seems it's a natural curve, right?
It's interesting you brought up ESG and then CSR, which is the early version of what ESG is, right? So those were the days when, okay, the whole thing was about a sustainability report. Take the report, go and PR this. Take the report and go and see whether the media
run
will
a press release.
Run a press release, shake hands, put a big banner, you know, take photos. I'm so glad that we have progressed since those days of that. where it's very token kind of, PR for show kind
Trophy
of.
wife style, right?
Yes, it is. Where we are now talking about ESG that's a bit more literally sustainable, has longevity, has long term. And sometimes one thing that comes up for ESG, right? So like I do take courses in sustainability, and one of the discussions that came up for me as a comms person is the topic of whitewashing.
Whitewashing,
right? As opposed to greenwashing. Whitewashing, when you purposely layer and tie a ribbon, spray perfume on something and say something smelly looks good or is a good thing, right? And I did think to myself, the role of a comms person is to come and poke at these holes to find where the gaps are before we put the CEO out there and an NGO calls us out for it, or the media calls us out for it, right? And it also makes us accountable in that sense. We put things out, yes, but we have to make sure if in 5 years' time we say we're going to commit to this, yes, that's the way it should be. So a lot of good ESG programs that I've seen are those that top down. The leaders are the one walking the talk. Really invested in the program and for the long term, not just because I'm here, I want to make myself look good for the 2 years I'm here, let's do this, right? It's for the long term. And then, of course, there are those that has longevity, where year on year, you see this, you come to expect this of this company. Things like financial inclusion. Early on, all the payments company were getting on board on that. And the whole thing was really to break that cycle, right? So like recently, I was an in-house and at a comms role, same thing. Us staff, we were volunteering to like train a lot of these migrant workers to help them to break that cycle. And you then see it, the staff feel invested, the staff feel like this is really the company walking the talk.
They are empowering themselves by doing real stuff that with impact.
Correct.
And I find that working as a PR and also working as an ESG specialist or a leader of ESG within an organization, is someone like a firefighter, but we do not necessarily need to put out a fire. We are always scrutinizing, we are always check, and we are just talking.
And we know where the fire hydrants are, we make sure they are all in place and working,
things
we do
like
the drills.
And I think because with all the investors, especially the limited partners, when they scrutinizing or reviewing their investment portfolios in a different matrix, especially with like all the ESG ratings coming up and people really relying on this kind of new mechanism for investing. I don't know your sense, but I feel that the PR folks, because we deal with multiple stakeholders on a daily basis, literally we sit at the same seat with the board people, right? We need to take care of everything. But for instance, a VP of accounting or a financial director or anybody, they're only working in their own booth, trying to resolve the things that are very vertical for them. And also in that case, there is another role, which is the head of ESG. Literally supply chain issue, trade issue, human resources, gender equality, governance structure. They are working together like the secretary of the board, PR, head of PR, and head of ESG is forming a new triangle. And this triangle is very interesting because they are literally, I want to use the word, they are the ugly bitch within the organization because they are always bossing around, right? Saying, you need to do this, you need to do this because we have best practices, we have protocol. And what excites me is basically the role of PR is becoming more like a leading actor, actress stuff. Previously, we were more like the supporting actress.
Producer, maybe.
Producer, we are the doer, we are the thing. And now we are literally strategically working with the secretary of the board and also head of ESG. We are becoming a new evil triangle.
I think that's the beauty of doing comms for a client or within a company. Sometimes a lot of them work in silos. They don't talk to each other or they don't like each other. And a lot of times, say what you want, if that press release is dead or what, every time we put out an announcement, you realize they're talking through comms, using
they're
comms
defending
and
themselves.
The press release, like, this is the time when you force them to look at every single word and hold themselves accountable. Or they're going to talk about, why is my quote in front of this person? Why is this quote more and less, right? But then you realize it forces people to be accountable, it forces people to sit down and agree and align on that direction.
And compromise.
Right? Yes. So I think that it takes a certain type to be able to work with all these egos, make them in a way, not say happy, make them comfortable with what you're trying to put through, and then be able to speak on behalf of. And I think the important thing is, as the comms person, you need to have the conviction and keep true to the values that you have and you hold. Because only then are you able to be the mouthpiece for the organization.
Yes.
Yeah.
I think, ESG in Asia is really becoming the up and becoming topic.
Yeah.
Because I think it started in the United States and then it's a global thing and the European folks, they get started earlier as well. And now I think the two biggest players, one is Singapore, of course, because this is a financial hub. We have a lot of issues. We have the APAC headquarters for many Fortune 500 companies. So basically a lot of instructions across the region. We're starting from here.
As well as manufacturing bases,
Yes.
that's where a lot of the issues
And
about
also another big
coming in.
player in this case is China, of course, because China is the largest emitter for carbon, and China is still restructuring its economy and is embracing with the rest of the world. I think for now, Singapore and both China benefit greatly from globalization. So we are the two economies in Asia that do not want this globalization thing go under, right?
Yeah.
So that said, I think ESG, especially in ESG in Asia, is really from concept to leaning toward practices. And there is a very interesting news cycle created. And do you think the comms people or PR people and ESG people and also a secretary of the board can be best friends in the future?
I think, like I always say, in a workplace, we don't have to be drinking buddies.
Yeah.
But we have to be professional.
We need to be allies.
Yes, we need to be professional. And it always helps to have an eye on the ball. Anytime you feel that there's conflict, go back to why we're doing this, right? And the why shouldn't be interpreted differently.
Yeah.
It means that the direction is wrong to begin with. Then you go back to the drawing board, right? What's
Yeah.
our strategy for this moving ahead? And importantly, it's something that your company should own. It's a brand that you own. If this strategy is going to be easily replicated by your competitors, maybe you then need to look what exactly it is we should be doing that is true to our brand voice, right? And you are right that it's in Asia is an up and coming spotlight on ESG, right? It came in different forms, whether we talk about child labor in the past and all these issues. And there are always critics who say, the West are passing the problem to us.
Yeah.
They are the ones who consume the most. They want their things cheap and good, but the factories are here, right? So, or even like WWF, you look at the logo. Why don't you choose something that's in the West?
Giraffe, or it's a panda.
Why choose a panda? Is it just a China problem then, right? So it's a bit of changing that misperception.
Yes.
And also looking at best practices, right? So if we don't look at the past, always look ahead. Best practices. I know like up and coming, there's this very interesting thing in Denmark called the cow fart tax, right? Where pigs and all that, where the farmers are going to get that tax based on the methane that their livestock produces in 2030. So these are interesting best practices because we have a lot of agriculture, farming in Asia as well, right? Where can we learn from that? Because I feel that at the end of the day, if there are best practices that we can adopt, it's a case of why not?
And also, I think there is another factor in this, is basically, I can definitely sense the dynamics when I travel across Asia, in China, in Hong Kong, in Singapore, in Thailand, in Bangkok, etc. But when you visited European countries, you go to United States, it's not that dynamic. I mean, now because of the technological innovation, because of the people are willing to grow, and are more eager to grow. I think Asia, previously we are called the Far East. It's because London is the center of the world and we are literally Far East on the map. And now Asia...
They take that as the epicenter, right? The epicenter has moved.
And now it's becoming more like a distributed center. There are a couple of regional centers across the world, but definitely Asia is up and becoming. So in this case, I think if we adopt these ESG principles, although it is Western dominated or Western initiated, but there is a strong say from the China and ASEAN and Asia stakeholders that we can literally make this something that really works along with us.
And this is at a corporate level. Can you imagine, like at educational level, right? Because you rightly mentioned, like Singapore, China, we are what are hubs for a lot of this. You increasingly see a lot of further learning regarding this area, and increasingly, what we are learning is more customized for this market. Because it's developed by the people who are living in this market, right? And then it becomes more relevant. In the past, it's not going to bother me.
It's a localized story, right?
Yeah, it's not going to bother me. This is too far off, this example and all that. Then you realize the threat is real, but the opportunities are also very real.
So that brings another question is about education, because with the destructive power of AI, we don't necessarily need to memorize all those things, right? We need to understand why it comes, especially I think for non-science projects or disciplines, it's more difficult to learn, right? Because you need to understand the dynamics within. You don't have to memorize those facts anymore. Previously, when we learn about history, we need to memorize which year, who did that. And now basically you need to understand why this has come into reality, why it was like this, the situation. So I think, it's even with the ESG, it also gives a lot of pressure for the educators. I think, this is we talk about 3 bottom lines, right? But there is definitely not an inclusion of this ESG concept with the current curriculum, especially for the future generations. Do you think ESG education need to go into the younger generation?
It definitely is going into that. So even from young in schools like in Singapore or elsewhere, right? Students are learning about sustainability, and they're talking about the practices.
It's already included in the curriculum.
It's already included in the curriculum, where they are aware, right, about finite resources on this earth. So as they increasingly go into this, I think the youth these days, they are more involved and they have more of a voice in social causes, which comes from social media and all that, and it's quite a good thing that they come into this aware, and that also puts a demand on corporates and the corporates that they work for. Like, what are we doing or what are we not doing? I remember I had many years ago an agency junior in one of the PR agencies I work for, and she said, I don't work on this client because it's GMO. It's against what I believe in, right? And increasingly, we will have a lot of this kind of conversations that we need to take into account. Like, as we accept the kinds of clients, as we know who to represent, same thing, we need that judgment call. Are we helping them to cover up something bad? Or are we helping them to communicate something good that are moving towards? That I can live with. If you are doing good, I'm on board, right? And the thing about ESG, I like to think, so there's ESG, and there are 2 other E's. One is education.
Education,
right? And the other E, economics. At the end of the day, you cannot do good without no money, if you don't have money, right? So the way that certain corporates think, they might make it so obvious that it's all about the money. But you do need that good balance of that, right? You need the economics, the business behind it. And it means that you have to select what kind of ESG factors or causes are you pushing for, right? Things that obviously, yes, will benefit you, but will benefit the industry long term. And things that your employees can get behind. But of course, there are some industries, for example, healthcare. They are definitely going to prioritize patient care, safety,
innovation,
over this kind of few good things, right? So there are certain things that we cannot just say, let's look at ESG as a whole. But I think it brings a lot of factors. Now we have ESG.
Yes,
right?
Of course. And the ESG has a lot of say, because previously we were relying on the institutions to do education. Now there is lifelong learning. There are, we need to go deep into the society to learn. I think, previously people will heavily rely on educational department within the government organizations, and also leading education groups that they do the innovation. But now, the enterprises, they definitely has a lot to say and offer, like the field study trips, and they can tell their sustainable business philosophy, how did they keep their conversation and business afloat. These are the real case studies that the young people need to learn before they apply for their college and everything.
I'm glad you brought that up, this private-public sector partnership, where students see things in action even before they go out into the field. They can see the decisions that they make and the kind of impact we will have, right? And I know there are like certain places, certain countries, there are students who would push back and say, why are we accepting monies from a fossil fuel company? It goes against everything we're standing for. But the point is,
they need to survive.
It's always good to cast a light and hold them accountable. Right? If they're not spending the money here, they're going to spend their money elsewhere. If they're spending money for good, it's a small win, but let's move towards how do we hold them accountable. So that might not necessarily be a bad thing altogether.
It's like a lot of limited partners when they invest in an asset manager. For instance, if the money is related to churches or educational groups or pension fund with a certain purpose, they will not invest in any that is like the tobacco, alcohol, liquor, things like that, because they think this is something that very go against with my philosophies, and we do not want to empower this business, and please refrain us from investing in this certain type of portfolio companies. And the same situation happened when we talk about education. Is basically we need to incorporate and be inclusive enough, because basically now, let's not talk about the education system, but the IB curriculum is something that is designed to resolve a problem. But that's also something that I think is not hybrid enough. For instance, if a guy or a girl who is very good at mathematics and want to have an econ future, he has to learn from the classmates who are interested in biology to learn about biodiversity, how investing in biofuels is impacting things. It's more hybrid, more than an IB curriculum can offer. And these real case studies also include some young people who are interested in public policy, who wanted to become a public servant in the long run, right? How can we design mechanisms and policies to curb such activities? So I think, we need to think bold about what ESG education looks like.
It's holistic and it's evolving all the time.
And solving real world problems. And if you identify a problem, you have a solution, you need to lobby. You need to pitch your ideas. You need to be a kind of like a missionary in order to get more people know, right? So communication skills is naturally included in this type of education. I think this is a new thing.
It is.
It is nothing without ESG. I think this does not exist.
I mean, people communicate on a daily basis, right? You can talk, but you can talk with impact. Right? There's a huge difference. Imagine you only have 30 minutes. Like we always say, your elevator pitch, your 30-second elevator pitch, right? You get into a lift and you want to pitch yourself. What are you going to say? Are you going to make that 30 seconds matter? I think that's very important.
And I think our discussion can go on and on forever. But this is more like a conversation, a catch-up or an interview and a brainstorm, right?
It is. It's like inspired by people like you. Because every time I talk to you, one is I get reminded why I still love doing what I do.
You love it.
Professionals like you, right? Because you bring so much energy to the table as well. And I think we're energy people. We just bounce off
energize each other.
It is.
I think this conversation should go on, and I think we've created something that we need to find another time to talk about ESG education.
Would love it.
Because what I see is, particularly this conversation happened in Singapore, and I'm from China, mainland China. I think Singapore and China should take the lead in ESG education for the young people. This is something that should be initiated by these two leading economies and should have the spillover effect in this case. Because obviously China is changing itself with the ESG concept. there are 绿水青山就是金山银山 right? 10 years ago when you leave Beijing, the smogs were terrible. But now when you revisit Beijing, the air pollution is no longer a big issue. Things changed.
Yes.
As you said that the younger generation, they're like the generic folks for this new generation, for this new era. They're international, they are social media, they they grow up with social media.
They grow up with social media, grow up with AI, grow up with a not work fully from office kind of mentality. A lot of them come in the workplace with a work from home policy already in place, right?
And previously without AI, for instance, if I were back in high school, if I have a brilliant idea, I literally don't know who I should be asking the questions. For instance, if I have a good deed, the first thing is how can I get fundraising? And now you ask ChatGPT or any AI tool, they will give you some solutions. And then things can get started. But how to empower them with the ESG mindset or forward-looking or literally sustainable mindset is something we need to also include someone from the education sector. We need to have the fundraising mindset in order to keep this project afloat.
Yes.
But this is definitely the future.
It is. And I feel that, like you rightly mentioned, Singapore and China, because a lot of spotlight is on these hubs, there's also a responsibility to stand up to be able to do things together.
Yes.
And of course, that takes into account the rest of the markets, helping to lend a voice to some of the markets which either do not have the resources or do not yet have the capabilities to speak up in that way.
Yeah, and I think this is interesting. I never imagined that we come to this kind of very, very, how to say that, very determined way of doing things because I just wanted to ask you to join on my podcast. But next time we can talk more about, cross-cultural communication because now basically facing Chinese companies and Singapore companies and especially all the other global players to be across the ASEAN region, they need to communicate cross-culturally.
Yes.
And I think there are many more episodes to expect for my podcast. And I was so appreciative that Wendy can sit down with me in Singapore.
Real pleasure.
And I hope that our listeners will really get excited. And just send us a note either on LinkedIn or anything. If you find this topics interesting, we can always get started the conversation.
Thank you so much. Lovely to speak with you.
I hope that I can rejoin you in Singapore maybe in a few months.
Definitely.
But thank you so much for everyone. Thank you, Wendy, for joining us. And we look forward to seeing you again with our show.
All right. Thank you so much.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
可持续对话，让对话可持续。我是哲明，我们下次再见。